we ready to get started then? Yeah, we'll call this meeting of the Sustainability Commission on June 27th, 2024 to order. Welcome, everybody. Start with roll call. Yeah, do roll call or do you do? I do. Okay. All right. I am here, Chair Wolkowinski, Vice Chair Mary Metzger. Commissioner Noah Baker.
I'm here, if you can hear me.
Commissioner Kristen Conkle. Here. Commissioner Tom Lemmy.
Here.
And Commissioner Roger Skurlock.
I'm here. Yes.
Commissioner Skurlock, would you like to do the land acknowledgement, please?
Sure. Land acknowledgement. So the Sustainability Commission humbly acknowledges the ancestral homeland of this area's indigenous nation and indigenous stewards. These lands, still inhabited by native descendants, border mountains sacred to indigenous people. We honor them, their legacies, their tradition, and their continued contribution. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place is home.
Okay, now we'll open it up for public comment. Is there anyone here from the public to join us today that would like to say something? Moving on, approval of the April minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review and consider the April minutes? Would anybody like to make a motion to approve them? I'll motion to approve.
I'll second.
Fantastic. April minutes are approved, and moving on to business. Today we have Shannon Jones, the Water Services Director with the City of Flagstaff, here with us to give us a water rate study update. Shannon?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Members of the committee, Shannon Jones, Water Services Division Director. Am I supposed to share the slide?
Whatever you want. I have it open.
If you'll project it, and if it messes up, it wasn't me. Just have a few slides, some of them which are just a background. If you haven't heard, we've been going through a pretty extensive water rate analysis, and from that analysis was a recommendation for a water rate increase. The study was specifically for water, wastewater, and reclaimed water for those three. So for water services, we are an enterprise fund. We're made up of 4 divisions.
Here, you can scroll over.
Thank you. And we'll back up. So water services is one of the components that makes up the City of Flagstaff infrastructure. And this represents kind of how those services are interconnected and also codependent on each other. With the ultimate goal to provide fundamental services to the community. We do rely on support from the other divisions, as well as those divisions, I like to believe, also rely on support from water services. All of that centralized around the city council that provides the policy and directions. Working towards the goal of just providing for high quality of life for all within Flagstaff. So a little bit about water services before I get into that. Again, we are an enterprise fund. That means our costs are covered by the rates and fees that we charge and the revenue that comes in to really kind of be self-sufficient. That is the intent of an enterprise fund. Water services is made up of 4 enterprise funds, that being water, wastewater, reclaimed water, and stormwater. We do try to look at those as individual sections and try to keep them also kind of self-reliant on the rates that they bring in, the revenues they bring in, cover their costs when at all possible. So our system is made up of 4 treatment plants. We have 2 plants on the drinking water side, 2 plants to water reclamation, our wastewater treatment. Our system is made up of over 14 drinking water tank facilities located throughout the city and 2 for reclaim. Over 30 drinking water wells and pump houses. We maintain over 450, almost 450 miles of water distribution pipes and almost 300 miles of sewer collections. So again, I think the intent is like a lot of infrastructure, a lot of facilities that we maintain and resources that we need in order to make that system work. We do also oversee 5 pipe stands, 3 for drinking water and 2 for reclaim. And again, a lot of these are, I would say, for maybe people outside of our service area that can fill up and haul drinking water and reclaim water as well, especially for things like construction, dust control, compaction, things like that. I feel our industry is very highly regulated. A lot of regulations at both the federal, state, local level. Very sensitive to that. We're going to make sure we're meeting all those expectations. And also that we're trying to find ways that we can integrate sustainability into our water, including conservation, which is an interesting business model where, so one business where the product we sell, we encourage people to buy less of. And the division is also made up of 97 staff member team that make all that work. Within our organization, specifically around the rate study, I'll talk about 2 components, one being the operation and maintenance, and the other one being the capital. Operation and maintenance, again, in our lens, this is the things like process equipment, our labor, our utility cost, our machinery, those components and resources, our personnel that we use day to day to make sure we provide that level of service. So what are we seeing in operation and maintenance? I think as most people we're seeing is these increase in costs over time. And so I picked out 4 of the largest costs for utilities, and those include electricity, chemical treatment, the cost to repair and replace, and personnel costs are some of the largest expenditures within the utility. So what happens if we have insufficient funding at the operation and maintenance level? Well, what will happen is first is we begin to defer the repair and replacement of the aging infrastructure. Right, we begin to take this Band-Aid approach. How do we get the service restored back? And how do we live within our means? How do we stay within our balanced budget? We begin to minimize our integration of technology in our facilities, right? We begin to scale back those operations. We begin to sacrifice things like resiliency and robustness. I think for an example, within our industry, it's what they call kind of a duty plus 1. So at a pump station, if you need 2 pumps in order to provide the service, you'll have the 2 pumps and then you have a backup pump. In the event that one goes down, you go to your spare. When you lack funding, typically when you go to the spare, you don't have the means, right, to get that other pump repaired. You don't have to today because you still got 2 pumps running, and so you continue to move on. The challenge is in the event that another pump fails, you've kind of already played that card, right? So you kind of give up some of that robustness. Definitely not somewhere we want to be. And then ultimately trying to meet those services through the lens of limited personnel resources, an additional challenge. So what are the benefits of a fully funded operation and maintenance funding? Now we begin to move more into looking at higher level sustainable use, development of water resources, looking at ways to effectively manage our institutes. We move out of that reaction because we're not having to react to those situations because we're investing the capital that we need, allows us to ensure to focus more on the water quality, making sure we're making investments in repairing and replacement, moving more into like an asset management than a reaction of just making a repair. And also having the ability to retain our qualified staff and staff that coming in that we can invest and how we get them up to speed as quick as possible. So on the operational side, Flagstaff does average about 6 water main breaks per 100 mile of pipe. So for us, that means about 25 times a year on average, a water main will break, which takes us from our day-to-day tasks, right? Everybody stops what they're doing and we react to make that repair. Just to kind of put it into context, if each main break complete repair costs $100,000, that would be about $2.5 million annually in just reacting to those water main breaks. On the collection side, very similar, again, almost 300 miles of pipe. We average about 6 sanitary sewer overflows per year. So again, 6 times out of the year that something will plug up the line. We have a few pictures there of whether it's roots intruding, failure of pipe, grease, something that causes that stoppage. But ultimately, you stop what you're doing today, you address that, and then as quick as possible, you try to get back to those other needs day to day.
Would you just show us what those
What you're seeing?
individual pictures are? Because
Yeah, no, of course. So here in the upper right hand, so this is a camera looking through a sewer pipeline. And what you see here, these are tree roots, vegetation roots that are intruding in. Here what we have is a sewer manhole. You can see that there's been some erosion around the manhole. I also point out that if you're not familiar, what you're seeing on this manhole, those are spacers. And so ultimately, to get a manhole to grade, you'll put these rings on it, right, to get your ring above. Really, that shouldn't be more than probably 2 to 3 spacers, especially for people like me, right? I appreciate not having to kind of climb through a 24-inch opening where the actual manhole is about 4 foot in diameter, but the longer that is. So again, and something like this, our intent would be as we come in, let's raise the manhole and not just keep adding the rings. But yeah, just showing erosion that would occur. This is inside of a manhole, and this is what we've called like an invert or a half pipe. But again, what you're seeing is that this should be finished, polished concrete. But over time, right, it deteriorates. It is a very harsh environment with sewer gases, things like that. So it begins to deteriorate. This is a brick manhole. So again, not ones that you see nowadays. That's not how they build them. So this is, again, this is probably a 50 or 60-year-old manhole. And they used to build them brick by brick. Now everything is precast. Could be fiberglass. Everything is streamlined. And then down on the bottom, it's also a picture of us inside a sewer line, and that is grease. Grease that's been poured into the system and then just kind of gels within there. And so, yeah, so just a few examples of things that could potentially cause a sewer overflow.
I was just curious.
No, thank you for asking. So then we transition to the capital improvement. Let's go. And so what do capital improvements do for us and how does it help the O&M? So the intent of the capital program, one is to address the capacity of our system. How do we grow with our community and keep up with development? How we implement master planning efforts. When we do these conditional assessments, what are the things we can do better and how do we plan for those? Also, how do we develop future water and wastewater supplies? What does the next iterations look like? How do we maintain our infrastructure for water supply and collection systems? Integrating asset management into our infrastructure. And what does the future look like? Where's that innovation? What do things like advanced wastewater treatment and how do those fit in? That's really what our capital program, some of the things that it supports. And so again, this is just iterating on some of that about right, having a capital improvement plan, what's approved and programmed, what do we have funding for, what's informed as times and conditions change. Projects have dynamics and just through time, those costs adjust. And the unfunded projects, meaning things we know we need to get to that is not currently programmed. Through our water rate study, I would say that our capital plan is conservative. Conservative meaning that the projects listed in our current CIP are built off of master plans from 2015. So it's not that it's a master plan that we just did in 2023. So that being dated. The master plan is conservative that it assumes a 4% cost escalation. So over the term of the CIP, I'm assuming that things will continue to escalate at a 4%. I will tell you today that's conservative because capital projects are coming in at 100%. Our capital plan is dependent on external funding sources. It is programmed into our funding strategy for things like grants, loans, leveraging that. So there is some dependency on that external funding sources. And also the CIP does not create a lot of capacity for citywide initiatives. I will say it looks through a very narrow lens of what does the water pipe need? What does the sewer plant need? So we do move into like larger city planning efforts. when you want to find those city initiatives, but our CIP, I think, does have a very focalized lens that it looks through. We did share a map. So where does this stuff happen? So there on the right, which is hard to see, but a list of 62 projects currently identified and programs, and where they occur and how they map across the city. So you can see, again, we're very widely dispersed across the city. The needs and the investments do occur across the spectrum. All right, so a little bit of background on the rate study. So the rate study does provide funding for both the O&M, the operation and maintenance, and the capital improvements. The objectives of the study was multifaceted. So one, it began with building a financial model where we take our financial information and build out that model. It did establish a cost of service. Cost of service meaning look at each one of our customer classes, determine the level of service that's required to meet that demand, and what are the costs associated with that. Review the rate structure. How is that rate structure really ties more into it, not just the classifications, but things like tiered water charges, and looking at that structure. And then adjusting rates and fees, including fees outside of the rates for other services that we provide, such as for construction, meter set fees, to septic haulers, to car washes and how they dispose of their mud and debris. So I did look at all of those pieces. The last rate study was completed in 2015, which did have rate increases, the last of which went into effect in 2020. So about a 4-year span since they've been adjusted. And we began having the discussions with City Council in September of 23. We've just completed our first public hearing on June 18th with the next one scheduled for next Tuesday on July 2nd. So if approved and moves forward, we are recommending that the rate changes will go into effect September 1st. A couple of things that we have available is, so under a website, cleanwaterflagstaff.com, has all the information about the rate study and the stuff that we're doing. But in addition, we did develop a rate calculator that has the current information in the rate package. So an individual can take their municipal service bill that they receive from the city, and with that information can plug the information into this calculator and show each of the changes, either for the first year or even out for the 5 years, for this is a 5-year planning period. It can show them what the impact is that they would expect to see on their bill. Also gives them the ability to move some of those levers, meaning if you're currently using, 5,000 gallons a month, like what would your bill look like if you used 4,200 gallons a month? Or maybe it helps kind of set some targets and see is that cause and effect. So what have we been doing over the last 9 months? Council has been doing a tremendous amount of work navigating through a rate study and trying to incorporate not just an initiatives of how we can fund this to be successful, but also what are the ways that we can minimize the impact of the ratepayers, which ultimately we know does occur. So a couple of things that council gave specific direction to the development that helped to minimize that impact was, one, under the capacity fees, which is for new development. They directed us to use actual flow data versus design flow data. Because in the model, we could have took either approach. Using the actual flow data helped to minimize those capacity fees, which in a sense minimizes the cost of the home to the buyer at the end of the day. In addition, we added solids loading as a component to the capacity fees, and that also allowed those fees to minimize the impact. So even though adding the loadings to the equation takes a look at what are the solids loading, not just the hydraulic loading on the sewer, but it also allowed us to take all projects that were solids dependent and put those into the calculation, which will kind of minimize what that capacity fee would be coming in. I think that's relatively new in the industry. There's probably just a handful of communities around the nation that are looking at that. I think the interesting fact is this is becoming more a reality through water conservation, because as we conserve water, and I'm sure you kind of all have heard the less water in the pipes, but the solids aren't decreasing, right? Those are increasing. And so this becomes more dynamic for utilities, and beginning to integrate that into how we look at our rate structures. I think is Flagstaff is kind of relatively on the cutting edge of what that means. And and fall in some other communities. Council also reduced the amount of revenue recovered from the base fees. So currently water was at 29%, and that was moved down to 25%. Ultimately, 25% of our revenue, our target is to collect that from the base monthly fee, regardless of how much water you use, 25% of the revenue comes from there. With it being 29% and moving it to 25, really empowered the end user to have more control over what their bill looks like. 75% of the revenue now is recovered from that volumetric. So the more you can serve, the more that you can move that bill up or down based on your usage. So I feel that was very intentional by council to move that to the 25%, giving power back to the end user to determine what their monthly bill would look like. The model also assumes a 90% execution rate of the operating budget, mostly driven by salary savings. While we would like to be 100% staffed all the time, that is definitely a challenge. And so recognizing that and not charging rates, assuming we're going to be at 100% in the execution. Also in my role, it is expected that we come in every year on budget and not be over budget. And so automatically assuming that allows the rates to come down, that we're targeting more a realistic delivery level than just assuming that everything is going to be perfect and 100% staffed and at that execution. So again, minimizing the impact to the end user. They also adjusted the residential tier rates where they shifted more of the peaking costs into those higher tier 3 and 4. So again, the higher users will assume more of the peaking cost, but for those water smart customers in the tiers 1 and 2, they will also see less impact for the efforts that they're doing through conservation. Council also gave direction to consolidate some of the customer classes, which makes the structure simpler. And also helped reduce the rates for some of the classifications. In addition, they did adjust those miscellaneous fees that I mentioned earlier so that the individuals receiving those services pay for those services and it doesn't end up on the ratepayer in that monthly bill. So again, I would say for the septic hauler, what is the true cost of receiving that load of septic waste? Because if they can fully cover their costs for that, if they don't, that cost automatically gets pushed onto everybody else's monthly bill. So right sizing and adjusting those additional fees. On the CIP, we do assume an 86% execution rate of the CIP and increase the amount of CIP funded through debt to 38%. Again, these are aggressive approaches that ultimately they'll allow those rates to remain more realistic and to work to minimize the impact on the ratepayer. So again, these are all just work that systematically we've done over the 9 months to council's direction to see how do we know this is going to be an impact. We know people's costs are going up. Have we done everything we could to kind of minimize that? And that highlights a few. Just touching on a few of the assumptions in the model. And these have all been points of discussion through that whole time frame. Right now, the model does assume a 1% growth projection. It assumes a 3.5% cost escalation through the O&M. Again, there's a few distinctions. I talked about electrical and chemical costs. The model does assume that at 6%, and our CIP is assuming a 4% cost escalation. But those are assumptions that the model does build out. There you can see the CIP funding at the 86%, and the debt financing, we do look at a combined water CIP. Is assuming about 44% of that CIP is funded through debt. Wastewater, 27%. It gives me a combined total CIP debt financing at 38%. So what did that all boil down to? Ultimately, so when we currently look at what's being proposed, this does show the previous to final with the last adjustments that council made. But previously we were looking at a 15% increase for water over a 5-year span. That would fund CIP at $185 million over a 10-year period, and about 30% of that would be funded with debt. Through council's direction and wisdom, now the CIP is looking at about $163 million over the 10-year period, 44%, which would be funded through debt, with an average revenue increase of 10% across the 5 years. I will point out that because of the cost of service, that first year won't necessarily mean 10% for everyone. So some of those changes I talked about being in a tier 1 versus a tier 3, that first year is almost kind of a right sizing or an alignment that will occur. So it will fluctuate. Some will be less than 10%, some will be more than 10%. But then over the next 4 years, once that alignment is made, it is realistic that you would expect to see a 10% through that. Again, the bill calculator gets into each individual's account to kind of look at that at a granular level. For wastewater, previously we were looking at about $112 million of CIP, 21% funded in debt, and was going to require 2 consecutive 25% increases, followed by a 15, 10, and 5% for wastewater. Now, in the current proposal, we're looking at almost 97 million through the 10-year CIP with 27 funded by debt. And it looks at 2 consecutive 20% increases, followed by a 10% and then 2 consecutive 5%. So that's currently what's being considered. Again, we completed the June 18th read. July 2nd will be the second read. We continue in community rate change communications, even being here today, kind of talking about what's happening and where we're currently at. And that will continue. So September 1st will be the effective rate date of the rate change, if approved. And we'll continue those communication points available, maintaining the website, making sure that information's out. And we'll continue to provide updates to the council and the community about how that's tracking and how that works. So thank you for letting me go through that. So I apologize if that was a little long, but I am absolutely available for questions and anxious to hear any feedback.
Thank you, Shannon. That was really informative, and I'm really glad to see how much time and consideration has been put into those calculations and the rate increases. Does anybody have any questions?
First of all, I have to tell you, I'm so impressed with how articulate you are. Sit there feeling like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm in a graduate course. It's wonderful. So interesting to listen to. And I know that, please excuse the naivety in the questions, and I apologize. I was tardy, so you might have even already answered these questions. When you talk about the debt, are you talking about a bond? You're talking about municipal bonds? Is that where the debt?
That would be one form of debt, but we do also look for low interest loans. So through the state's Water Infrastructure Finance Authority, the WIFA, there's also loan capabilities. We have a few, and yeah, so I like to think wherever I get the best interest rate is where we borrow the money from.
So then the other question I have, it's kind of a stupid question. I apologize ahead of time for that. But I think in terms of, for example, electrical company where you do sometimes things like there are people who have given that they're in an economic situation, they're given a little bit of a break. Has there been any consideration relative to like small community farms or community groups that are trying to raise vegetables and fruit, et cetera, and the water expense is going to be extreme? Can they put in for some kind of amelioration of the billing, or is it like, well, because I know I tried to raise potatoes and squash a few years ago, and it's a $400 fee. It's the end of the month, and I thought, okay, I'm going back to the store. But so I'm just curious about that.
So there are definitely conversations. I think there are some resources available. We work very close with the conservation, the sustainability group through our conservation, but through the division on things like the community gardens, how we make those things work. We also think there's outside funding strategies that we're committed to help navigate through. And we're also working with our finance department that oversees the billing on what resources are available for customers and what other opportunities are there. So those conversations have been occurring, and they will continue to be ongoing.
It happens on an individual basis. It comes to you and you have some dialogue with them about things.
Yeah. Thank you.
So are you gonna have enough money to run the system? I mean, I'm hearing decreasing flow rates, reduce cost on the water itself, reduce cost on the flat rate. You know, we got a transient community with a lot of people who aren't here all the time and not using water and reducing their cost to be on the system, but system costs aren't gonna decrease with growth and time. I mean, it's kind of sounds like we're creating a recipe for problems down the road.
Well, it's very dynamic, but what we are doing is moving the needle to go forward. So I will tell you with what's being proposed, I don't want to say it's light years ahead of what we're currently doing, but it definitely moves the needle. So examples that we use is currently we target replacing 2 miles of infrastructure on the water site every year. And that's what we've been working to do, and that's what our current CIP funds. But I also told you that there's 450 miles of pipe. And so we've we've made the comment, right, that I only have to live to be 225 years old and we'll be done. So by increasing those CIP allows us the opportunity to say, well, what, so maybe I don't get to the 4 or 5 or 6 miles, but what would 3 to 4 miles look like for us? And how are we begin to do that? And this plan absolutely helps us do that. It doesn't take us out of the realm that I would not be seeking outside funding at the state and federal levels. The model does assume some grant awards, and we have to be more aggressive than that. But then ultimately, my job is to make sure that we come in and we deliver those things within the budget, and that we do the right thing at the right time in order to get those done.
My other experience with pipes has to do with cast iron pipes, but in another town from the 50s. And I'm assuming that in your planning structure, you're identifying where the old piping is and where we have to, what you're talking about, you say 2 miles. How many miles are at dire condition rather than optimal, every 2 years, 2 miles every year would be great.
No, I appreciate that. The reason we sleep at night is because we don't know that number. But it is across the spectrum, meaning today we do have brand new pipe that was just put in the ground, right? And we know that we have pipe pushing 100 years old.
Yeah.
And so we do take those things into consideration. But it also isn't just always the oldest pipe. It's like, what's the critical risk? What's the point of failure? And what are the other city initiatives that are occurring? So again, working with our partners across town to say, hey, we're going to be doing this water line. Does this street also need sidewalks and curb and gutter? Are they repairing a street and we do a conditional assessment to try to align those initiatives so that we can get the biggest bang for our buck as we go? So there's multiple lenses that looks through what that occurs. But yeah, to your point, age is one of those indicators, but you also look at the risk of failure, the pipe size, and what are the other initiatives? Maybe it's fire protection, right? Working with the fire department on what doesn't maybe have complete coverage, and could that move a project up along the spectrum?
I know the city has done a lot relative to, like the hotels have to have a little bit of an extra tax for all the people that are coming in. With the new properties that are being developed, is there anything that the city is doing relative to, you put a brand new big old house in there and it's got 5 bathrooms where most of the older houses have maybe 1 or 2. And is there I realize you're gonna have to pay more money because they'll use more water, but is there anything about that that's going on?
I mean, so based on the demand, we'll drive the capacity fee, right? So those capacity fees will be more impactful for larger homes versus smaller. But also I would mention one of council's directions was wastewater did not have a base charge. For wastewater, everything was volumetric, and I would say pretty extensive conversation over things like the summer home versus the second home, where if I'm not there and I'm not using water, I'm not really paying a sewer bill. It was said, I think it assumes a minimum of 500 gallons. But now, along with water being reduced to 25% of revenue, wastewater will also now have a 25% revenue target for its recovery, setting that monthly service fee. So even someone that's not using any water will still at least pay that monthly service fee for wastewater. So that's a new addition. Really also stabilizes the revenue for wastewater, which helps them get better interest rates when they go out to borrow money.
So that's just kind of like a connect fee.
Not the connect fee is different, like you didn't have to pay to connect. So monthly service means whether you use our service or not, it's available. We hope that you do,
That's kind of
but
like,
if you don't,
that's
For being affected.
yeah.
yeah. And so wastewater didn't have that prior to this, and now it does.
Well, and I would assume that there's a level that is kind of like people have been coming in under the radar. I mean, I'm thinking about, for example, Airbnbs, where the house is used maybe 3 days out of a month, and they're using the water and everything else and the wastewater, but it's kind of, so really not paying very much for that. So that's kind of what I'm hearing you say.
It does,
They're gonna
the
have
same.
they have to pay something. Okay.
Right, so the level of service, so I still need to maintain those lines, it's still part of our equation. So even if they're not fully utilizing what's available in their capacity, that at least that base is set.
Does Flagstaff have any kind of remediation problems of lead pipes or things that contamination or dangers like that?
So that's all looking very, very good. So we are coming into the final phases of the revised lead and copper roll where they're doing the inventory. So right now we're doing a ton of work to create the inventory, not just in the utility, but also on the customer side. That's the challenge, right?
Judy, what's inside the house?
Yeah, and what's past that. So I think we still got 2 years remaining before we got to meet the deadline. We're ahead of schedule on that. So staff is working to complete that inventory, which will be uploaded. But I'm happy to see that level about how much work is going to have to be done is very minimal. So again, we do find some galvanized, but not necessarily on the lead. It's been good.
Does that savings calculator break down like rate increases for things like, I get what you mean by volume, but with capacity increases in diameter of piping, meter sizes, are those fixed or variable rates for individuals? And if they're a commercial space hooking up with like fats, oils exiting into discharge, do those have variable costs?
So those do. So the rate calculator will not take that into account because those are, I would say, are those miscellaneous fees for things like that. But I will say, when you look at the classifications of why I'm a resident versus why I'm a commercial versus why I'm an industrial, they do take into account those types of loadings for both total suspended solids and biochemical oxygen demand. And so your type of use also puts you in that customer class, which is why when you look at the classes, that there could be a different charge between a commercial versus an industrial. On the wastewater side, I think we broke it into 3. I don't know if we came up with any good terminology. I think it's just like your industry A, B, or C. But it's driven, the distinction is the type of loadings. And on the water side, it has to do with their peaking and the amount of water, their water use patterns. And so that's one of the distinctions between the classifications and why it's not just one set rate for everyone, is because those costs of service delineate between the different customer classes. So a resident won't have the same level of service as a hotel. They'll be different. So hopefully that answers.
All right, I just wanted to note, and I can always send Shannon's email. Do you want me to do one more question?
I actually have a question. I was wondering where the reactionary funding fits into the budget. You said like 25 million last year on, pipe breaks and unexpected fixes like that. And then I also saw the capital improvements budget has come down from where it originally was. And so it seems to me like if there was a larger capital improvements budget, maybe that reactionary funding would be less. How does that all factor into this study?
No, that's a great point, and I apologize for not clarifying that. When we look at the previous and final, so I took this slide from our most recent discussions. So early on, the previous was fully funded CIP, unfunded. We really took a hard look at what would it cost us to get to 100%. And then those were the rates associated with that. And so ultimately there was a couple of approaches. Again, being able to execute 100% of everything that you say you're going to do is a challenge. And so I think council recognized that. And so being able to say, well, what's realistic and what would it look like if we made this level of investment? So again, to me, it's not even about taking projects off the list. Like, which project are you not going to do? That's not the case. Really what this is about is the city and the governing body making a conscious effort to say, we're looking to invest $163 million into water infrastructure over 10 years. We work our master plans, we work our valued engineering, and we do everything that we need to do to make sure the service is provided, and how do we integrate that asset management? How do we do that forward thinking? I will say that level of investment is a good level of investment, and that is higher than what we're currently doing. So what this doesn't reflect is our current CIP, which isn't necessarily built that way, right? Current CIP says we should do everything in 2 years, right? And so we work at that, but like 2 years goes fast. So again, I would think of it more as a level of investment. So not that the CIP was reduced. I think through our discussion on where we want it to be to what's realistic for our community, that level of investment, what we're looking at is about $16 million a year over the 10 years. And that's significant investment that the city will be making into that water infrastructure. So hopefully that helped a little bit, but yeah, CIP didn't decrease. It's still moving up. It just came down from where we thought we were 2 weeks ago or a month ago.
Just want to make sure there's enough money for this.
Yeah, thank you for that. Clean Water Flagstaff also has, you can send comments there. We monitor that. Also, I'm in the directory. You can reach out if you have questions. I'm always available.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Any other questions?
that's all right.
We can
Be a follow-up
directly. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Next up on our agenda is the equity assessment and the neighborhood sustainability grant program. And today we're going to focus on the benefits and barriers. And I'll turn it over to you, Sam, to lead us in this discussion.
Kidding, I'm gonna kick us off.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, we're just gonna continue our discussion. We've been talking about it for a few months. Of course, we had a break last month, but I just wanted to kind of remind everyone why we're having the discussion to kind of reorient us. The sustainability office and our staff have been on kind of like a learning journey, learning about equity and its important in government programs and sustainability in particular. And also have learned more about the history of inequitable government programs. And over the last year, staff developed this equity assessment tool with the goal of staff to go over all of our programs and look for our strengths and areas to improve equity. Because the neighborhood sustainability grant is ours, I thought it would be most appropriate to bring that here for the commission to look at as you all help update materials and you are the review board, you help assist with people that are applying through grant office hours and workshops, and you help advise me on outreach and help with outreach. So you're just a very integral part of it all. So that's where we're at. And I do have Sam here with me today, who I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, hi folks. Thanks for having me here tonight. Met some of y'all, but for those I haven't, again, my name is Sam. I'm working in the sustainability office and the climate team as a member of the American Climate Corps. And I'm mostly working on a project related to community resilience through resilience hubs. But I've had the pleasure of spending some time digging into these equity questions that we're asking in the office, and recently completed one of these equity assessments for the program that I'm working on. So I appreciate the effort that y'all are putting in. It's hard work, and they can be kind of hard conversations to have or hard reflections to make. So I'm really grateful that y'all are willing to take this sort of work on. I wanted to start with a bit of an intro. It'll be some repeat info, I think, from the last time that we met, but I think it's really important to create the right mindset and the right space for tackling some of these questions. So yeah, to start again, really understand that these can be tough conversations, and they kind of should be tough. Like if this feels like an easy thing to get through, it means that we're probably not digging into it in the way that we want to. So it's okay to lean into that discomfort and for this to feel like a challenging place. It's okay for it to be messy and for it to not reach a happy, neat conclusion at the end of this conversation. This work requires a lot of ongoing effort, ongoing reflection to be done well. So I think it's important that we acknowledge that we're not going to leave here with all of the answers. Along those lines, in terms of creating a good space for this conversation to flow freely, I wanted to acknowledge that it's important for everyone to be really fully present and responsible for this work that we're taking on here. And also to ensure that we're creating space for all of the voices in the room. When I get into these conversations, I get excited and I have to make sure that I'm reeling myself in sometimes and making sure that there's space for everybody, for the voices that aren't maybe as forthcoming, to share opinions as well. So if you are one of those people like me that loves to really get into the conversation, just make sure that you're maybe reflecting on that and trying to find ways to bring everyone's voices up. I also wanted to make sure that we try to approach this conversation with what we'd call like a both and form of thinking. So the idea there is that we have our own absolute truths, the way that we see the world, the way that we believe that everything works. And those are true to us, but that might not be the lived experience and the truth of everyone in our community. And if we operate under kind of a binary form of that truth where there's a right and a wrong, we can sometimes miss the fact that everyone is seeing these things a little bit differently. And that's a big part of equity work, and a big part of what we have to try and do here today is create space for thoughts that are challenging or might feel uncomfortable or might really stand apart from our own lived experiences. Yeah. And so with that, I want to say that I'm really enjoyed reading through the works that y'all did on this at the previous meeting. Some really great ideas came out of that. And tonight we're going to continue that on a few sections. We're going to be talking about the benefits that this program, that the Neighborhood Sustainability Grant can provide to the community. We're going to talk about the barriers that community members might face in trying to receive those benefits. And then we're going to talk about any potential for unintended harm that might come as a result of this grant and this project. We're going to do this in a roundtable forum. I understand that y'all have brought some ideas of your own to share. So we're going to go around the circle and spend a bit of time on each, and we'll kind of open up the conversation and really get into some of the tougher questions once we have the opportunity for everyone to share their thoughts. So we'll start with benefits.
Well, I guess just really quick, I wanted to just revisit the work that we did last month. In that kind of revised equity assessment, which again, we kind of restructured just to fit the format of the commission better and to like focus on the grant program. So if you scroll down, and I'm going to do it up here as well. Sorry, it's not on the printed sheet because we had quite the list really. And I know I think we all kind of left on different pages and feeling like different levels of quote unquote success. But I think again, that speaks to like, it's because we were digging into it, and that's how those conversations go. So
Based on what Sam just said, it sounds like we were successful.
yeah.
I felt
Yeah.
right.
I really think so. Yeah, so you all came up with 22 like ideas of how to reach our communities more effectively. So I'm just gonna highlight a couple. So a few of the populations that we might be missing in the outreach and communications for the grant program, including specifically with a focus on those groups that are commonly discriminated against, but that using that kind of equity lens specifically. We thought of young people fearful of climate change who are eager to make a difference, non-English speakers, for example, Spanish, Navajo, and other languages, and then also people intimidated by the grant application in various groups. And we have a great list of opportunities to reach them more effectively. And hopefully in this meeting, we can also choose some priority action steps that we might want to implement in this coming grant cycle. We're not going to get to everything, which is okay. This grant program is going to keep going, and I think we'll keep thinking of more things to add to this list as well. But looking forward to also kind of identifying those priorities and seeing how they play out over the next few months. Thanks.
Yeah, and as we go into these next sections, keeping some of those groups in mind that were highlighted there is really important when we're thinking about these conversations, especially related to barriers and unintended harm. Yeah, but to start, I wanted to just give everyone some time to share what they came up with in terms of the benefits of the Neighborhood Sustainability Grant Program. So we can go around in a circle.
I'm going to be typing them up there.
And this list, Tia, that you pre-populated here, these are some of the benefits that we identified last time? Or are these
Some that staff actually
Okay,
took time to identify. I know last time was confusing having examples that weren't necessarily for the neighborhood sustainability grant program. So these ones are examples for the grant program from some sustainability staff.
And if our ideas overlap here, that's a good thing. That means we're on to, you want to kick us off?
Sure. The benefit that I, kind of came up with was the idea that we can be for something. I mean, literally, it's more of a head trip, I guess, because, so much of the stuff we do, we're kind of opposing something that we want less of or whatever. But, by engaging in a way where here, we're really going to be for this. We are for, remediating, climate damaging, things. We are for food. We are for, whatever, but just give, that sense of really being for something as opposed to just doing or learning. Those are all great, but, I want to be engaged in a deeper level than just, it's a good idea. I really like the idea of, it's like being on a team or, cheering for your team or, supporting something that, in that way. And so I think, as we roll through these grants, giving people that sense that you're really making a difference. And so this is, super important and we're all supporting that. And a little more cheering maybe and a little less,
Well, I struggle to come up with other things, but just going through what was it, the sustainability, no, the resilience leadership training, it impressed upon me how, one of the main things of that was to get the community to work together and coalesce around a project. And that has so many beneficial effects that spin off from it. And it kind of, you can get a snowball effect from just starting some of these programs that will, I think like what Tom was saying is that, you can get enthusiasm to build and people will go further than just the project that they got a grant for, but it can spawn all kinds of other ideas.
I think I'm already starting to see a theme because the main benefit that I came up with is really aligned with what we've heard already. I think that one of the coolest things about the Neighborhood Sustainability Grant Program is that it gives people in the community, groups, individuals, kind of power of ownership over contributing to the city reaching the carbon neutrality goals. So it's a really active way to come together as a larger community towards this broader goal. So, doing positive things and empowering people so that when we do reach our carbon neutrality plan goals, everybody who has participated in this program will know that they've had, an active role in that.
It might, again, as you say, we're all being reiterated, but I like the notion that you're giving concrete tools to people to really substantively make some changes. We have so many people, we're all feeling so, oh my gosh, the environment is just spiraling out of control. And we're, the world is coming to an end, blah, 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 blah. But this is something that says, you have the right data, we have a little bit of money to help you achieve something and have something substantial, some concrete tools. And so you don't feel helpless. You feel like, I can make a change. I can do something. And the other thing is it generates that notion of creativity. The juices start flowing. I never thought about this. We could do, so-and-so has this empty lot down the street. Maybe we can all do a little plan of that. And it gives people substantive tools, that notion of something that's concrete to make a difference and affect something that a lot of people feel like they have no control over, no effect of. And once you feel like you have some control, then you stop feeling hopeless and you start feeling like you can change. So that's what I like about it. Pretty much what everybody else said already.
Crystal, and then we'll go to Noah too.
I have a couple. The first one was increased opportunity for innovation. So agencies or individuals that might be already doing something and just a little bit more money helps them do something even cooler, greater, different. Second, it helps address the perceived needs of community members from the bottom up versus the top down of what government offices might think the community needs, right? So, I know that kind of goes on with what everyone already said. And then I also had, it's a little less competitive and more accessible than other types of grant opportunities for just like the average person. So not being like associated with the university or with a research team or something like that.
I also want to change the name from grant to giveaway. If you say the word grant, people automatically think you're talking about something federal, state, or college or something. There's someone who calls it sustainability giveaway. A gift, we're going to provide a gift.
And it does come from government though.
I realize that, but it's, a lot of people are intimidated by that.
Yeah.
Noah?
Can y'all hear me? I got no reaction on my side. Can you hear me?
What?
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I'm not there, everyone. Okay, so grants like this are pretty much the most effective way to do community-based research and development. It's like literally, in my opinion, one of the most effective applications of finances. So going back to that innovation, a lot of that comes from a community level, and the huge way to solve the climate crisis is at a community level. The other thing is it shows, young people that the city isn't just there, to give tickets or put up stoplights or stuff like that, but it also really shows how the city can help with some of these projects, and provides a really good example for both young people and other municipalities or counties that are looking to do the same thing.
Definitely spoken with multiple people across Arizona and beyond about the grant program. So people see it and are like, oh, I would like to replicate that in our community. So cool.
That was an amazing quick list that got pretty big pretty quick. That's really good.
The question, the source of the funds, federal source or is it state source or is it the community?
Community, yep, comes out of the environmental management fee that everyone pays. So that's our city bill or water bill.
Water if we wanted to.
I don't remember if it's on the water or sewer.
Can't be the water sewer, we know how limited that is. It's probably the.
The electric bill's got an environmental fee on it as well.
Yeah, but that's it.
For the city.
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah, we pay for it.
Yeah, so we can call it what we want to.
I'd like to go through these benefits now one by one and dissect them a little bit more and figure out who is currently receiving these benefits. I mean, we know that the benefits are going to the grant awardees. But we're gonna try and dig a little bit deeper into that. Talk about which sort of folks and which sort of organizations are really receiving these benefits and who is not receiving these benefits. And a lot of them, there will be a bunch of crossover in our answers for the different benefits that are discussed here, but we're going to try and take the time to go a little bit one by one and see if anything new comes up along each stop. So to go back up the list, we've had a few ideas here centered on empowering community members with new skills and giving people within our community the power and some ownership over the city's carbon neutrality plan goals. So that idea of community empowerment and ownership, who is that currently benefiting through these grants and who is missing out on that?
The obvious one is folks that receive the grant funding, but also one of the major objectives of the grant is to engage in collaboration with other agencies and engage in volunteer management in some way. So I think it extends beyond just the agency or the person receiving the money itself.
it's inherent in the problem that we do not know who is not applying. It's kind of like the opposite of the positive is the negative. We don't know who isn't asking for something and why they may not be asking for it. So it's something that's an unknown. That we have a great many people who are making applications, but it seems like they come through institutional structures. Churches are asking for it, schools, people with organizations, community organizations. It seems like that's the groups, those are the groups that, in my mind, had the preponderance of applications. The everyday citizen, walking down the street thinking, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have a new garbage can here, whatever their dreams might be. We don't hear from them because they're not connected to something that organizationally already ties up to the city or other governmental entities.
I think that idea that these grants are more accessible to folks within some of the existing organizations and institutions. That's for a wide variety of reasons that it's more accessible to those folks. But you're totally right that it's a little bit more of a daunting task to take a project like this on your own if you haven't done something like this before, or if you are new to grant writing.
Well, I thought it was interesting. We saw a couple of applications that were people who you could foresee businesses, like the ones that were making little pullets, that group, that they thought, oh, I'd like to have an environmental business. How do I get started on that? And I don't know, maybe that would be through the Chamber of Commerce. Maybe there's other organizations that we haven't hooked up with that might be a really good connection. And perhaps we haven't because we thought, well, they don't care about the environment, but they do. We're all concerned about the environment. So that might be the thing to do too. There might be organizations in town that we haven't zeroed in on.
Yeah, like how can we further support them beyond and say that example could be help their project longevity by connecting them with business resources and help more people be impacted by that project really after the grant term.
I kind of want to expand on Mary, what you were saying about people who aren't connected to organizations or institutions aren't necessarily going to apply, but I think we've had some challenges with people that have been solo people that have gotten the grant, not being able to then build out those partnerships by themselves and carry out the project, right? Like the fridge project this last year, great idea, was funded enthusiastically, and she struggled to figure out what to do with it now because she's not connected in.
The fridge project is not taking on the one that was to be painted by Shanto Begay. That one.
I don't remember it being painted, but
Yeah, it's gonna paint it. Really excited about that.
that would be so cool. But yeah, she hasn't been able, even once you cross that first hurdle of I'm by myself and I'm applying for this project, the second hurdle then is part of the project is building relationships so that you can execute the ideas that you have. And so I think it's kind of a double whammy there. If you're flying solo, you have to do the work to get the money by yourself, and then you have to do the work to build relationships.
Perhaps that's something we need to build into the application. It's something that says, okay, you're a sole person. We encourage, one of the steps is, what other connections are you gonna make?
It's in there.
It's one of the language, it's in the language of the application itself. It says you have to have groups that you work
You have
with.
to have partnerships.
And she
So
has
it's
them
out, and you have to have letters of support.
Well, it's always, I mean, I thought those were the good, it'd be good if you had this.
Yeah.
She didn't, that's what you didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised that one didn't work out too, but I just kind of thinking about the folks that aren't receiving the benefit are the folks that are
Yeah.
not connected into
Some agency.
a bigger system of.
But she had all those references to other projects in Phoenix and LA and all that other stuff. That's too bad.
There a penalty for not completing something?
They don't get the money.
They'll be
So they don't get floated at a.
asked to return funds. Yeah, with that one, we've definitely been trying to brainstorm with community fridges. We've been advised to hold off on expending the fund, but we ended up doing it because she's shown that she's trying really hard, and so might as well, with the agreement that, if it doesn't come to fruition, the funds will be returned.
Isn't it that you can apply for an extension, right? So you
Yeah.
can get another year of time, and then there's something in the grant that if you fail to complete the project, you're not eligible to apply again for another grant.
Ever or for like a
I think
year?
it's a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
She needs to get like a food bank. Maybe they could put the refrigerator down here.
I think it's good to have some room for grace with these rules because I'm sure, like, the amount of work that has gone into both writing the grant and trying to execute and being unsuccessful, I'm sure she's way blown through her budget in terms of the amount of time, and effort. So I think, maybe, the penalty for not next year, but yeah. Even asking to return the money, because these aren't huge grants, right?
You don't want people to be afraid that it won't work.
Right,
You know,
right.
You gotta have some chance taking going on, I think, at some level in this city, right? Just encourage
My
that.
mind too,
Yeah.
like,
That could be very.
I don't know how that would work with the city, but it's worth exploring in terms of the time spent.
Right.
Figuring
You
it
did,
out,
the
figuring
police
it
showing
out.
up and saying you didn't do your job, we're
Yeah.
taking you to jail.
So yeah, having that penalty built in or that rule built in might be a barrier.
Let's use her as a good example. So she's not getting the job done. Has the sustainability department reached out to her, brought her in and said, let's see what we can do, what's standing in your way? And her response has been, I'm just a clueless individual, I thought it was a good idea, what's the deal?
No, absolutely not. Like, she has recently shared her spreadsheet of all the groups that have reached out. And I've had pretty big discussions with legal and, yeah, I've probably met with her 3 or 4 times.
We are talking about the woman who's gonna put a refrigerator out where people can just leave food and pick up food,
Yeah.
food available.
So, yeah, we spoke with the city attorneys, because originally we thought maybe on the community gardens, there were gonna be some issues with, electricity, because we don't have electricity out there. And yes, there was gonna be solar, but there did need to be a backup generator, we're having food in the fridge. But that wasn't like the main barrier, it was just like also considering, is this the best place that most best community to put it in, meeting a gap in services, and then also considerations of liability, which, there's ways to write that into language and.
Putting it near the food bank would be a redundant issue, ridiculous to put it there, you need to put it someplace where there isn't something that's getting out.
Yeah, and she's definitely asked the food bank. She has a very long spreadsheet of it. Yeah, again, it's not for lack of trying.
Sorry, go
I don't
ahead.
know, it's still just not as good an idea as it sounded like at first, maybe. I mean,
She had examples of people in LA and in Phoenix, and stories. They were, where they just put a big refrigerator in some area of Phoenix and people started putting food in and taking food out and it was.
Like a library box or something.
Yeah, and exactly, and water, people would drop water off, so because it was hot season, they needed water, it was a great idea. And again, Chantal Begay was supposed to paint it. Offered to provide artistic value.
Okay, I did one more thing and then we should get back to it. On Saturday, the community fridges are doing a pop-up community fridge because they want to be able to try to demonstrate
good.
how it works. And they're doing it at the Murdoch Center this Saturday, June 29th, at 10:30 a.m.
Go there.
And I can send this to you all, and you're also welcome to bring food if you have food with it as well. So yeah, I'll get you all that information.
You bring some of the potatoes I raised that I couldn't eat all of. It cost me $400 in water.
So I'll get that information to you. And then hopefully that will, help demonstrate how it works to the community. And
Well, this is a little bit vague about what kind of food would go in it, whether it would be like, you certainly get maybe gallons of milk and things like that. Would that be good?
Well, he's putting it in, he's taking it out, I would think it'd be the same.
No, obviously. Well, it would be something like, I mean, I'm sure, I don't know if any of you have this experience. I have a party and I have leftover food. Where do I take it? I mean, I often take it to Sunshine Mission, but they're closed right now, so I can't give it to them. It's a great place to put it in.
I want to take a step just a little bit back here. This is a great example of a barrier, and it's okay if we're kind of hopping around a little bit from benefits to barriers as we go through this. But here we've identified a barrier where folks who are applying as individuals might not have the support and the resources and the community buy-in that's required to make a lot of these projects happen. I really like that it's included within that this is like acknowledged that it's important to have those connections and those partnerships within the grant. I think it's important to note though that making that a requirement is acknowledging that it's important, but it's not necessarily the step to helping those connections happen and helping support folks who might have an amazing idea. Like this was an incredible idea that would be a great thing for the community. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are on what could be done to reduce that barrier to create opportunities to connect great ideas with the organizations and with the other folks within the community that might have the capacity to support those great ideas.
Go ahead. Sure. I don't know if anyone else knows about this. This was like a year and a half ago when Dave was still the chair and he really wanted to revitalize the presentations of the grants from the previous fiscal year. And we saw them in, what was it, February? Okay, so I was on a working group with 2 other commissioners that kind of redesigned what those presentations will look like. And it's going to involve like a networking event at the end of the grant cycle once you complete the project. And then it'll be in like February of the following year. So 2025 will be the first one, which we will be in charge of organizing. And the, yeah, the idea is that part of it gets out of the formality of a commission meeting and allows people to network with one another and maybe build some new ideas. People can invite more people from the community to come to hear the presentations. It doesn't have to just be for us. And if you have an idea that you might think is a good idea for next time around, you could maybe meet folks that have already done the grant, talk to them. So we did some work in addressing some of the like networking. What if I have an idea? How can I connect with other people, brainstorm together new ideas for next time around and maybe work together? You know, it's a limited scope, not for every single person, but it is one thing that will be a change starting. That's exciting.
Kind of like a home show.
Yeah, that's
Like a
really
home show.
cool.
Let's do it all.
It's gonna be like excuse me, like a round robin type of event where everyone will be presenting at like a table with maybe 2 or 3 other grant awardees, and then you know, you won't be able to see every single presentation because they'll be going on.
It might behoove us to invite groups like conservation corps or environmental classes
Yeah.
or environmental clubs or something that perhaps we need to start kind of reaching out to groups that care about this issue, but hadn't even thought about doing a grant.
Right, and then they can see the presentations.
Yeah, because otherwise it's just people telling each other what they're doing, but if you get other people to do it. Okay, you could be a charity.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
I'll help you. I'm
people
just
might
kidding.
have to
I'm
be
kidding. You're good.
Okay. Yeah, I know you like party planning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bring the champagne and hot dogs.
That's right, you got it. So they do those leftover hot dogs,
Yeah.
you take them down to Murdoch Center.
Would it be out of the realm to, you know, if someone came up with an idea to promote all of these programs, that you would award a grant to that? Look, PR promotion,
Oh, there's an idea.
you know, kind of thing where, you know, because otherwise that sounds like we're taking it on or we're putting it on Tia and her group, you know, to promote, publicize, you know, do all of these things. When it would seem like, you know, you could probably get people that would like doing that kind of stuff, that if they were
And give
given
them a couple of dollars to do it.
yeah, you know, to do it, could do it.
I think that's a great idea. I think that's a Nicole question with the budget.
I was gonna say, maybe the city could take a chunk of the allocated budget and organize an event and work with the PR. I think what you're talking about is an event following the grants and having people talk about what they've done. I think a way to reduce barriers to forming those partnerships leading into qualifying for a grant, coming up with a good project might be, we could host like a pitch, like a kickoff pitch competition where individuals are welcome, organizations are welcome, and people just come together and like you give them a serious time limit, like 3 minutes or something, pitch your ideas, let's come together, find people to partner with. And it could be an event that is, the idea of the event is to foster and create those connections in the community of people that are interested in applying for these grants. And so I think that the opportunity there for people to be inspired and make connections and find new ideas would be huge.
Are there other departments that do grants? This is the only one that has a
BIA was.
grant.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about, like when you do career day at a school or you do, I've said that seriously, truly, the Hope Show, where you have little pocket, you have a big environment, a park, or an auditorium, or wherever, even out in the little city council, people have little desks, chairs, little signs. Just a thought. You too can get a grant and you too can make a difference. I'm talking, that's like the career day thing is you invite different groups that want to do something. But the piece that's behind that is, again, we're back to that structure of organizations that already have inherent structure. So they've already got the gig going on. But then you have people going around, oh, maybe we should have this, I can do that. There's an idea. And they get a little pamphlet or whatever.
That was one of the barriers I put is I didn't really see any kind of templates or seeds or germs. And I think what you're talking about, the contest, maybe you can grow that because I don't know what I don't know. And so what would be a good project? Who knows? I mean, there's a few that, we've seen the food stuff, the gardens, things like that, but that seems to be the recurring theme. And, it seems like we got to get outside of that a bit to really innovate in a way and find some good things.
I think bringing people together to talk about it, people could end up forming teams at that event and forming partnerships and, finding other members that have an area of expertise that someone else
I
might
had
lack.
an idea and this is
Right.
what it was.
Right.
Well, maybe, I had this idea and we could work, yeah.
Do we ever do,
Yeah, you gotta,
It could be like a kickoff for the, grant opening.
ever do a sustainability table at things like Hullabaloo? We have a big table, they have all that other nonsense out there. Do you do that? Do you say you can get grants through us? Sign.
Some of, I don't think we've done specific grants, but since we have like so many programs,
Yeah.
but we do go like community markets
So
and.
you get the little water bottles, things like that. That might be a place to put that kind of thing, like pictures of the different people who've gotten grants. This is one aspect of sustainability is we provide grants and here's where the application state is. And maybe if you have an idea, something that goes out into the public, because not everyone reads a newspaper. Not everyone, we talked about some of the things, flyers, grocery stores, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there are other places where people are like, celebratory mood and they're cheerful and they're looking at ideas. Oh, there's an idea. Just about.
Noah?
Hello. It is kind of difficult to hear what's happening in the room, but forgive me if this has already been kind of brought out. It's the neighborhood sustainability grant. So obviously it focuses around community and neighborhood. And I think we would be failing the grant and failing the whole concept of it if we didn't promote directly those partnerships in the way that we're talking about. And I'm wondering what the feasibility would be of making it a requirement to partner with another group or another organization or a private industry or someone who has some other resources or something like that.
You just said that. They were told, yes, they had to do that.
You can't hear it very well.
Oh, sorry, I can't hear very well. No, I take it all back then.
In theory, it's that what other agencies are you partnering with that support this project, that are providing help in some way? In practice, you might have like the sponsorship of an agency that's like, we're here to support you if you want it. And like that checks the box on the application. But there are plenty of agencies that have the staff and the resources to carry out a project on their own, and maybe don't do the same thing, right? So I'm thinking like the Arboretum, they get a grant every other year, I think, and I can't like remember them partnering with an external outside agency to do their project.
But there's a community outreach aspect to
Yeah.
the project? Like, isn't that one of the things on the rubric?
Yeah.
Is that
feeds and things like that.
I feel like the
So it's like
collaboration is
tier
part of the rubric.
management.
Yeah, it has to do two of this list of three at least. And it's like build community partnerships, engage or facilitate or manage volunteers,
It's
or
educating.
serve and underserved.
Right, so Noah, I think that's part of the application process, and I feel like all of the grants that ended up scoring on the rubric and getting funded definitely involved
Yeah.
collaboration, community partnerships, community activating community volunteers. I see your thumbs up. Sorry you can't hear us.
Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. I'm not there. I'm on Teams, so it's kind of my fault.
But we're kind of going around in a circle on this though, because we started with, how do we get people involved? Let's come back through a group, and now we've got, well, they have to have a group to be involved.
So I have
Back to the same thing.
also an idea. Yeah, I went to present on the neighborhood sustainability grant program to the climate resilience leaders, which Tom and Roger actually were part of. The 6-week series every Thursday.
Happy hour tomorrow. If anyone's-
And in there was actually one of the previous recipients as well, who works for an extension service in Yale. She did a horticultural therapy program. That's such a great program. So cool, yeah. One of her pieces of feedback was trying to figure out how her organization could still apply for a grant, because she has a coworker that works on a very different type of project, I think. But it's still within extension services, because they have such broad range of work that they do. Like, could they still apply for a grant? And so she wanted me to bring that forward to you all. And then, so that's one point. And then another point is, if we stuck with that rule, could we reach out to those groups and see if any of them would be interested or have the capacity in connecting with a different group, or somehow partnering with another group that maybe doesn't have as much experience writing a grant or needs those community partnerships. How we do that.
And I think that rule was put in place like in the name of equity, right? Because the same agencies were getting grants every year because they have good people on staff that know how to write grants, right? So like the rule was there because of equity, to allow more people to have the opportunity to get a grant, let's have the same agency get it in time.
Well, I think we're also going to, I'm not sure.
Yes, but like,
I'm sure a whole lot of people in the community know about the different grants and how they serve the community. I mean, I'm thinking about that one little church where they changed the lights out in there. I thought that was so cool. But how many people know about that activity as opposed to the people in the church? That there needs to be something that goes out so people go, you know what, our church could do that, or we could do that, or that. And when it stays to just us, or even just a report to just us, then it doesn't plant the seeds. It doesn't grow the crops. It doesn't create the flowers.
Well, that's the new revised presentation format
how do
that
we-
we'll have in 2025.
So
We have to get people at the presentation.
Communications and outreach.
Yes, we have to get people at the presentation. She's talking about having a presentation, but is she talking about having it? I thought you were talking about a presentation to us again. With
I'm
the
lost
frame.
with where the conversation went, I'm
When
sorry.
you were talking about we wait for the people who are getting the grants to do their presentation.
Yeah.
That you do it all in a larger group, and then they would talk to each other, but how do we get people who get the grant to come in and experience the presentation? That's what I'm talking about.
I put that question off for another day, just to keep us focused on this specific line of questioning. But to get back to some of the benefits that we've highlighted here, I think that the conversations that has been going on around how we can empower community members and empower individuals that maybe don't have the connections needed, it's really great. Along with that, this was something that came up a few times, but this grant has the ability to empower people, to make them feel like they are proactively being a part of the positive change that needs to happen, to create a more sustainable community, to create a more sustainable neighborhood. and to reach the goals of the city's carbon neutrality plan. So again, we have this general idea that the benefits of that empowerment are, and that like added like sustainability efficacy that people can feel from this process is a lot of that is going to the folks that are currently receiving the grants. But I'm curious, are there any other folks that are experiencing that like improved empowerment or feeling of engagement, like they're part of the positive change?
That's a good question, and I think that the answer goes back to communication, because the fact is that everybody in the community is ultimately benefiting, right? And so the only way that they wouldn't be benefiting is if they don't know about it. In one sense.
We asked them, how should I hesitate to encourage us adding more questions, but like ask them about their plans for outreach. And it is so often tied to that community question, but
I like that, but I wonder if we just need to do a better job as a commission or as the city in sharing this with the community, whether it's, you know, like Earth Day is in April, right? So we could have a big thing at Earth Day. We could have maybe this pitch competition is, you know, aligned with Earth Day. So we get people communicating and talking about it and thinking about it well in advance of the grants opening. And just, you know, like find opportunities like that
That's
to,
a great idea.
you know, like longer term. So it's not like a heavy lift for us as a commission or, you know, a huge budget thing. But spend a little time and effort, maybe just around larger organization and community outreach. Pitch competitions are fun.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been
Really
here
are.
a year and a half only, but I've never heard of any of this stuff until I sat down
Right.
in this room.
Mhm.
You know, whether the programs that were working and being successful and were taking off, or that there was an opportunity. I mean, it was total, you know,
You know,
I was trying to stay informed, you know, I'm not in the cloud.
and it's truly a rarity that you walk by one of the grants that have been used and there's a big sign saying, due to the sustainability grant we received. from the
Yeah.
city."
it was
And
a
you go up to
question of
the,
that stuff.
you go past, you go to the Arboretum, I don't, big sign that says that we are beneficiaries of the sustainability grant system, blah, blah, blah. Looking at the little website, go to the sustainability.
Well, that kind of, I had another question come up as I'm thinking about that, you know, we're limiting, you know, recipients, you know, to, you know, by year at least. I mean, you can only do it twice. I mean, what do we do with the programs that really work but need, you know, continuous funding? And are we cutting them off because they're successful, but oh, by the way, we need to get somebody else just in the name of equity? You know, are we, you know, sort of hamstringing the things that are really working?
Well, something that might be a question to put into the application. Something might be able to generate some funding coming back to themselves, you know, like the little businesses that they will in some way create that ability to continue on. Because there is only so much you can do. I mean, it's not a huge amount of money. For
Well, right. But I was thinking the school one they had really struck me, and all of the therapy at the school. You know,
Yes.
because that's a continuous need. You always got new kids coming through, and I don't know, we want to be the source of the funding. I know the water guys sound like they rely a lot on outside funding at this point.
Well, and the other thing too is hopefully really good ideas generate other support. I mean, if it's a really good idea in the school system, the schools will start paying for it. They'll find a way to put it in the budget. And the PTA will, no, I'm towards, that's the way it works.
Yeah.
If there's nobody, if it's a new idea, you know about that, and it starts going, oh, you know what, let's do a bake sale. Before you know it, it's generating its own control. It's not something you have to fucking money. So the limitation helps people move forward in terms of becoming independent. But you're right, it doesn't make sense to punish them for being successful. So I got a yes button on it. Yes button.
I'd like to move on and take the chance to do another kind of idea dump in a similar way to we did with the benefits. Let's hop onto barriers. I think folks brought those. And I just want to get all of those out in the open before we continue the conversation much more. So let's go around the room again. and share some barriers.
I kind of brought it up as just ideas, templates, or how do we seed this in a way that people aren't coming from zero to come up with something, we actually, can provide some kind of suggestions or templates or something. Other communities, other places, other projects we've done that, have been great and been successful and, let people know about them in a bigger way than we have.
It says here, lack of familiarity with grant applications, lack of familiarity with the grant in general. There's not information out there. It has nothing to do with what they can.
That's the
We
first
could
thing.
share examples of successful applications, could redact like, information about what organization, names, just share a couple, because we get to see a variety of applications, right? Instead, we could pick maybe 2 or 3 that are very different from each other
So
and just share them.
they are listed on our website and then we talk about them in grant workshops. So I would love to hear like ideas about how to further utilize like past successful examples. To doing that, but
They are on the website.
yeah.
Okay,
I
sorry.
think that is if you have
The
any-
website is not that,
Yeah.
it is very dense, so but I would love to also.
But do we have
At the
a
website.
page or a section devoted to the neighborhood sustainability grants?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
there's a linked example for
There
like
you
a
go. Okay.
food grant and a waste reduction of like a successful grant.
But I didn't notice, is it in different languages? No, I mean, the website would be a great easy, place to start.
Getting a new website soon that will have built in, like a tool. Yeah.
I'm back to that notion, when the infrastructure was being improved through the Obama Biden administration, everywhere you went, there's a big sign saying, this is the result of the Obama Biden administration. I think we need some signage out there that says, this is a result of a sustainability grant, something that says to people, this is what, this is working. I don't know if we have a signage department in this city, or if we want to make that one of the grants. You be our signage person, we'll give you some money for it. But I really do think the biggest problem is people just don't know about them. I had no idea the Arboretum was so involved with the grants. So that's my experience.
Yeah, on the website with the grant application examples, I think one thing that could be neat would be putting the final presentation of that same project, right? Like here's the application, here's their final presentation, so you can see the start to finish, here's the grant, and then here was the project itself.
Yeah.
Video form on the website.
Just the
Yeah,
guy.
video form.
I mean, they did like a slideshow,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think visual is a really good idea. Yeah.
Anybody else want to share a barrier?
I have a bunch.
Share them all.
Time to do the application,
That's.
especially if
I
you
have the
are
same
working
thing.
for an agency and you're on paid time.
Time and resources.
Well, skill level in terms of writing or speaking in public, we change the video applications is option. Language, which we already talked about, and then this is probably a city rule, but there's a rule that you have to live in city limits, and I feel like there could be a lot of projects in the areas outside of Flagstaff that.
That are part of our community, but not technically in city limits.
Right, like Blue Park.
So do you have any water bills to us?
Probably not.
The only reason I ask is that would be if they're a contributing factor, if that's where the money's coming.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe they do.
Right, you're such an important part of our community. I don't think so, but it's always worth double checking. I do, I hope this probably is, it's part of the city budget, so.
But again, we may be, I don't know that Donny Park has its own water department. Do you? They might actually be using.
Company, don't they?
Oh, there you go, you're right.
A lot of water hauling.
That's right.
Hauling and wells
This is
that
the
are
reservation.
contaminated by particulate problems.
We have any other barriers?
My big one is time and resources to complete the application. So And a successful grant is a lot of work.
Another one might be lack of additional funding if their project idea is more than $7,500. Then we, kind of require them to say, where are they getting this money from?
That was mine. Is this really enough money to do?
Well-
I mean, some meaningful projects can be done in a shoestring, but others are great ideas, but you can tell
Would it make sense to offer people an opportunity of combined grants? The two people come together with their combined grant that they could have a $15,000 grant, more than 7,500. It doesn't make sense to say to people, well, if you want more money, we'll give you a break. But if you can say to people, you know what, if you can bring someone else in there, make it a two-some, make it a combined grant that where this needs more money, then you have that much more flow.
Quick one, it doesn't have to. Are you thinking like before even applying, or are you thinking after applying?
I think
Like,
putting it in the language of the application structure, it's ideally it's an individual grant. However, if you feel like you have a combination, there's an organizational group that has two things that will match, mix, they can apply jointly. I guess we'll call it a joint application, that offering the joint application process opportunity. An option. Too big.
Yeah, I feel like there were
Going on the
applications,
opposite way of equity.
right, there were applications we reviewed last year that had, with the letters of support, it's already a collaboration.
Yeah,
that's true. Joint entities.
Well, but they were only asking for $7,500
Right,
of the larger budget. They usually had a bigger budget. The other thing, do they have access to computers? Is that something we've got in the library that we have? They can use the library.
I talked about having printed out applications.
Yeah.
The only problem is you can get typewriters and actually have. No such thing as a typewriter.
Roger mentioned language as a barrier to reading some of the examples or even like getting into the instructions for the grant application process. But beyond that, submission or being able to see the grant application through in other languages is another area where, I mean, I don't know how you did necessarily address that without like a translator budget. But having the opportunity for folks to apply in Spanish, not just, read the application in Spanish and then have to try and Google translate their submission.
Help from someone. Does the sustainability office have?
Actually have an exciting update on that. We had some remaining funds this fiscal year, and we are getting of course, there'll be some changes that will have to be made next fiscal year. And, if we get applications in and help with, any outreach, but, yeah, the application is being translated to Spanish right now, or the full guidelines, as well as an outreach flyer. And then we'll have to continue working with them, of course, hopefully get applications in that need to be translated. But
Perhaps if they had questions, they could talk to someone in Spanish. That'd be great.
yes.
So is that a paid for, did you guys pay for that?
Yeah.
I bet
Yeah.
there's, in the Spanish speaking community, there's lots of people who would volunteer their time to do that sort of stuff. And I'm also thinking of Navajo and Hopi communities where there might be people who would be willing to do some, not 8 hours a day for a month, but a little bit of translation, because they can see that this will help their community some. Then there might be some volunteer work that would be.
The school
that we could
district,
solicit.
the school district has to have that kind of translation people, and they might have somebody that they could point you to. Say, go to that person. They do not hope, they do hoping. They have to have it for federal law. Unless they just have a program to use.
Love to, dive more into like further reducing these barriers.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good list of barriers that we got there. I'm sure more will continue to come up throughout the conversation, and that's great.
There isn't an age barrier, is there? You have to be 18 to apply. You have to be under 75 to apply. Is there any age barriers? If
No.
the conservation class at I will say, like, someone asked us and then a W-9. So it's, that's all right, it's just a form with their social security number.
That are individuals that are receiving it are getting hit.
So these grants are taxable?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
you have to put the money on your taxes. It's like in,
If we make it a gift,
well, with, you put it on, you put it on your taxes, so within the tax rate, you write down the expenditures that you make, so you take it off that. So it comes out as even out.
I just think
That's young, yes.
taxes
That's not
sit
great.
in your circumstance.
Yeah, I did.
I mean, yeah, you're right.
If
It's
you're-
not listed
if
clearly.
you're a
It says they have to
Supreme
submit
Justice, you
it
can get a
in
gift
but it's
from
not.
it.
Yeah, they're
Like, if they're budgeting for $7,500 and then they take 2,500 of it to taxes, that's not fair.
No, they don't pay $2,500. You have to declare it on your taxes and then you put on your taxes what you spent the money on, and so it evens out. $7,500 income, spent $7,500 on this business that I have. It's a tax deduction. The W-9 is a business thing.
You can increase those and pay the taxes, then that's not.
No, when I-
big.
So the barrier is, how do I do my taxes if I get this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because unless you're just, building a business and all the
Yeah.
more advanced tax stuff.
Well,
So what?
if you get
what
the
do
money
you
from
do
the, if you get the money from the department for upgrading your electrical processes and they give you money, you have to do it. You have to put that on your taxes.
yeah.
I had to.
Yeah, they put in their budget, this is gonna offset my tax, possible tax burden or something.
Well, and let me ask you this,
Just need more information about exactly
Okay.
how that would be, how individuals would be impacted
Yeah,
tax wise, because that's another situation where a business might know what to do,
Yeah.
but an individual or
I
a youth group.
I could ask like Marco Alatorre, because he's got siblings with someone that he used to work with in SDC for the biochar project.
I'm curious about what these people have had to do. Maybe they filled out the W-9, but they didn't bother to report to you.
Never reported it, I bet a lot of it, yeah.
Over $500.
That's a big chunk, because I could translate into
Are you
$1,000.
reporting it to the federal
for
government? You
somebody
gave it to them?
individual.
I'm sure. Oops.
Yeah,
Good,
so
so I think, but, yeah.
I don't think spend on.
What can we do?
after you do the W-9, do you send them, what's the, at the end of the year, when you like send everyone a tax?
Yeah,
I
that's what they do.
have never sent
To get it to
anything,
this
so
way.
I would have to ask who sent what and what they get, yeah.
That's what I got when I did the electrical thing. I got a little, it's kind of like your W-2 form. This is how much money you got.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
wonder
yeah,
if
you're-
they're.
If they don't get a W-2, then this.
Nonprofit agency or something isn't gonna matter, but an individual, it really could.
But if you're not getting sent the W-2, you're.
The 1099.
The 10, you do get it. If you turn in a W-9, you get the 1099.
My students do a W-9 in class for a grant, and they do not get a 1099 afterwards.
Okay.
That's interesting.
And because it's run, they need it to process the grant money check through payroll. So they have to sign up to get into their payroll. That's why they need the W-9, but it doesn't get reported to taxes
Where are they getting the money from?
from North Country Healthcare.
Because that's a different entity than a city.
Right, it's coming from their grant. Right, I realize that, but that's why I have the question of it is maybe possible that they're doing the W-9 just to get the check. And it's not
I
being
don't know.
No, and
reported.
I know I'm being redundant, but I did that thing with the city for the electrical. At the end of my W-9, they sent me $1,200 and then they sent me the 1099.
I want to reel this in a little bit, just because
Based on that.
this is great.
Might be a barrier.
This is,
Yeah.
we clearly identified a barrier here, and I think that we can find a way to address that when we have a better understanding of how that process really works for these folks. But yeah, I think it's generally a good thing to be aware of and to find some way to provide guidance or support on getting through whatever the tax process ends up being coming out of this. To go back up the list, one of the big ones that's come up in this conversation, and that stands out is a lack of familiar with grant applications or a lack of experience filling out grants. There are folks applying for these grants who are, paid professionals or who have years, decades of experience writing grants, and obviously they're gonna write some really incredible grants, and other folks might have amazing ideas, and not have the experience in this sort of work that's required to communicate that in a compelling, effective way. So, that's a barrier to some awesome ideas, maybe not quite, reaching a successful point or reaching the point where they're accepted, as part of this program. So what can be done to uplift some of those voices, or to create a more level playing field between folks who are coming to this with vastly different experiences related to this process?
I have an idea. We do a handful of things already, so I don't want to be repetitive, but you were mentioning, like, if you're working for an agency, and let's take the Arboretum for an example, because I know that they pay their staff, like, they write the grant on time, I'm sure, like, it's part of my 40-hour work week, and I'm working on this grant, and I get to, like, get paid for that. So I'm wondering, maybe if there is something in the grant where you could say, if you receive the grant, and this is not on company time that you wrote the grant, you can pay yourself for 10 hours of time out of the grant money at Flagstaff minimum wage. And that might get some of the, like, intimidation of, I'm gonna write this grant, it's gonna take so much time, I don't have enough experience, it's not worth it, like, is it worth my time to do it? Some people are getting paid already to write the grant, and so that might help even.
One limitation of percentage, how much somebody can make, because some people could just write a grant to give themselves money.
No, it would just be like a token of, I volunteered my time to write this grant, I'm not being paid by an agency. So if I get the grant, I get paid 10 hours of time off of my grant money at Flagstaff minimum wage.
So you could put a limit, so you could say within the grant structure.
Yeah.
You're writing an individual grant, and it's okay for you to put into your budget this much money for self-payment.
Right.
For administration of the grant.
Right.
That's what you do in federal grants.
That's pretty standard, the FNA expense. I've applied for grants before that begin with something simpler or higher level called a concept note, where it's like, in 250 words or 350 words, describe your idea. And, so maybe we could start with something that's a much simpler undertaking, give people an opportunity to think through their ideas and, like, what's your approximate budget? How much, like, without requiring details. And then maybe we could have that be like, the first round. And, it's more work for us as a commission, but if concept notes are approved, then people go into the full
So instead of all that
application.
rubric stuff, you have to do the 3 things and all that.
Well, you'd still have to evaluate the concept note against a rubric, but it would give them positive feedback. So it would help them know they're on the right track before taking on the larger effort of applying for the whole grant. It's kind of like a screening, or like an opportunity for feedback is what it is.
Would it also be though just another step that just adds more burden to people if they're like, oh my God, I have to write this concept idea, then I have to write a grant.
It's much easier than a grant. So,
Oh,
I mean, it
you're gonna
would,
still make them write the grant after that, aren't you?
oh, yeah, but it's, if you're like, oh, I have this idea and I'm thinking about, like I said, I've had experience with this, that it's, if your concept note or your pitch or whatever isn't approved, then you go back to the drawing board, you think about it some more if you want to.
Well, if it is,
Or if it is,
makes the cut, but you're still kind of uncomfortable with the process, is there any way to support that a little more than
maybe,
this is a good idea?
so maybe that,
Take
Kristen,
notes.
is where maybe we could offer a stipend, a small stipend for grant writing for people whose concept notes are approved.
Or offer someone in the department a stipend to help people with their grant writing.
One of the professional grant writers and awarded grants for helping others write them.
It's getting way out of there, isn't it?
No, this is good,
It's-
and this is,
This is really good. It's 20 after 6 though, so
Yeah.
what's your recommendation to wrap this
think
up?
I would like to hear everyone's, like, maybe priority action step, either one from benefit or barrier, or just one, either. And I can highlight those. And then I think maybe the working group can do further work on prioritizing and then starting to implement some of those. Does that sound good?
I wanted to interject one thing, just because not to keep this conversation going too long, but I love this idea of pitching your idea pitching a project in a much more small, digestible manner, and in a lower effort manner for the folks that are submitting these applications. And then having the opportunity for feedback on that for a little bit of response and review. I think it would be worth communicating with folks in the NAU Office of Sustainability and the NAU Green Fund. That's how they've structured their grant program. So the NAU Green Fund folks will do that. They'll write a 300-word pitch for an idea. And then throughout the process of writing the more fleshed out grant, and again, this is oriented at students, so they're probably trying to give them the opportunity to learn. But that like continued support once they're through that pitch stage is on the front end before they even like do the final submission of the grant. The team that will be reviewing the grant is involved and is giving them feedback and support. And so,
That's awesome.
yeah, we're considering.
I think that's great. I think we need to remember, we are also all volunteers for time, right?
Yeah.
And this grant as it stands with 2 review sessions already takes up a ton of time. And personally, I don't think I would have the bandwidth to add in another review and then continue back and forth with everyone.
And the other thing is we're trying to make it easier for people to get a
Right.
grant. And I'm hearing you say two levels of applying for the grant. Now, here we are saying two, I mean, my thinking is have grant level A, grant level B, I mean, grant A and B. If someone has this great idea, blah, 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 okay, this works really well, give them a simpler format to fill it all in as opposed to, you have to go back and now do the grant. If someone is a non-grant writer, a non-grant format, it's easier for them.
Because I think we have the workshops, we have office hour drop-in. I think we have a lot of time that we do like more informal pitches. Right, like when I had like 4 different groups to come in to my office hours, and that's what they did was like give me this little pitch and like ask for my advice on it. So I think having another step involved in the process that's official, that they have to do 2 things. Feels like,
Another barrier, just like a barrier for us.
I like the idea. I think
Yeah.
it's
Well, again,
it'd be really cool, but.
The
for
notion
us
might be
also being volunteers.
to make the application a lot easier, just that would be the application. Big idea, here's some grant writing, this is my budget, blah, 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 and see what they say, as opposed to this in-depth. Yeah.
That's a good idea. I mean, it is only $7,500.
Yes. And we have all this rubrics and did you do this? And how many people do you have helping you? And do you have letters of recommendation? Like,
Right.
let's make it easier.
So maybe the application is like a hybrid of a concept note and
Yeah,
the level that it is now.
That also takes burden off of the folks reviewing that grant.
Does,
if it-
yeah.
if it's the list.
yeah.
He would be turning over in his grave right now.
Well, what's the fear that it wouldn't happen, you know, and we just give money away and nothing would come of it?
That can happen anyway.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's,
I like the idea of the
Simple.
350 word, make it interesting. Here's your ideas above, and here's and again, within that framework, maybe page 2, tell us what your budget is and who do you have supporting you? Why do we do all of this depth stuff?
Well, what if there is like a submission form at the top of the web page or some other thing that for the people that aren't sure whether to apply or not or go through this, then they have like an easy way to submit this, like a short idea note that's like even lower stakes than like the office hours or the like workshop. And then we figure out ways to connect them to those resources, just like a little bit more hand holding.
But then make them go through the grant application.
Yeah, but doing a lot more. I mean, I don't disagree that there's opportunity to simplify, but I also know it's grown to where it is for certain reasons. So I think we'd have to just be really thoughtful about what areas were simplified.
Well, is the group agreeing that we need to look at the application and simplify it, and make it easier and make it better, or are we? I mean,
I would like to just not touch the application.
Yeah, I'm interested in the history and
It's
comment
so much
that
work
you just
to-
made. You
I've
revised
been
it a lot
on the
last year.
neighborhood sustainability grant working group for 3 years in a row, and it is a ton of extra work. And I feel like we dialed it in pretty well.
Okay,
Not to say that I don't think it could be simplified. I personally think
I'm with you.
there was a lot of really thoughtful input going into the grant itself.
It's a detailed grant to do some reading.
Mhm.
And I accidentally read too many grants, so I looked at the wrong numbers. I read grants I wasn't supposed to read.
And I think that what people are submitting isn't, we're not asking them to write 15 pages. Like, I think they have the mission. This, when you read the grant application itself, it feels really like a lot more going on than what the submission actually is. So that's because we have 7 different category options that you can pick and choose from, like, to describe all of them in here. So I'm also not gonna be on this working group this time around, so y'all can do whatever you want to the grant.
I'm not on it either. Who's on it? Do we know who's on it?
That's our
I'm on.
next order of business.
Oh, yeah.
Did you want, are you?
Yeah, I'd love to just take the last few minutes, if we have them, to go around and.
We have 3 minutes.
We got 3 minutes?
We have to set up the working group.
We can
so-
just popcorn some action steps that folks want to prioritize. If everyone just throws out one thing that they want to prioritize.
I think outreach is the one I've heard the most of, with awareness raising. And I was looking on the website, and you gotta go 2 pages to find the grant stuff on sustainability, which is not a big
Yeah.
deal, but it's not hitting you in the head either.
I think fostering connections between people interested in applying for the grant. Which is part of outreach.
I like the outreach. Earth Day, something that's more public and more out there and visual and physical. Notion that people have to go to a computer and find a grant. I like that notion. I like that Earth Day. Yeah, that kind of.
I like the opportunity to submit something, paper and pencil, video, having that at the library, like, same thing, I think the outreach stuff. I mean, I know you said you're doing it in Spanish, which I think was my biggest. Like, we also do Spanish. If there was a commissioner that spoke Spanish that could have officers. I don't know if we have one.
Any sort of social media, Instagram page or anything tied to
Yeah, there is.
this?
Smash that follow button, Tom. You gotta follow us.
Where? Where do you push that?
At Flag Sustained.
Oh.
Didn't think to share it with you all, but I guess I should have.
That's all right, Tom. I didn't know about it either, but I
Well,
don't.
you know.
Pop it up, beginning of each meeting, our feed.
So where?
Do selfie here. Commission. FLG. I do think maybe adding some demographic information on the questionnaire.
Say, what do you mean by demographic? You mean like how old you are, what your race is, how many
Yeah.
languages do you speak?
Race, gender, what neighborhood are you impacting?
I like the what neighborhood you're impacting.
You think we should do a drop down or open-ended for that one? Open-ended. Oh, you can't name all the Flagstaff names, like, I have Coconino Estates was on a flood warning, I had to Google it, I was like, was that me? I had no idea.
It'll come up on your phone.
I don't know,
Or
maybe
word.
like a map where you can like ask them to like hotspot on the map. Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to think what would make job easier after the fact. I mean, them.
Well, if they have a sense that they're doing something for their community, they ought to be able to name their community. They ought to be able to say,
Different people probably have different names, so
well, that's all right. They
even
can
if they're in
whatever
the same
name they have.
neighborhood, maybe they think they're in this neighborhood, so. All right, so,
All this.
Yeah. in preparation for this year's grant cycle, first I wanted to run it by you all really quick. I would like to try to open it up earlier than September 1st, aim for about mid-August. So nothing too early. But I just wanted to check in and see if I had that support from you all and if you have any concerns around that.
What's the close of the cycle? When you say open it up September 1st, when do you close?
It always closes on September 30th each year.
It's 1 month. So you're
Release
suggesting we need to open it earlier so people have longer time. I think that's a good idea, open it earlier.
My only concern would be if there's any revisions to the application.
Yeah,
But
and I I share that, and I want to just reiterate, like, all of these things do not have to happen
Yeah.
in the next
Okay.
month, like, we'll just choose.
I think there's a lot of conversation left that needs to be had to not waste our time.
Yeah.
You
By
know,
opening it up, you mean, and starting to take in ideas and.
I think we need to like come to a consensus on a lot more of what needs to happen and learn more about like the work that's been done before we go changing things.
Yeah.
And it would be good to have everybody go through a grant cycle too.
Totally.
So yes.
Yeah.
Let's
So,
open it early.
yeah, okay, sounds good. And then, each year there's a working group that's created, of less than a quorum, so 3 people or less, to work on updating materials. And that would be, back in January, you know, not everyone was even on the commission. I can't.
Did you all join us?
Hasn't been that long, it's in the spring.
Yeah.
Meeting in one mist or 30, yeah, so.
Yeah, in
April or something.
January, we did like a debrief of how the grant program went. And I took some notes there, and essentially I've taken those notes and already like added comments to the materials. And then also, this would be something that would be done on Google Documents, so familiarity with that system is helpful. And then also, you know, taking some of these priority items and seeing what needs to be updated in the materials, if anything. And then, yeah, I think that's the main working group. And then in terms of timeline, probably some time on your own and then meeting once or twice for maybe an hour before the July meeting, so that those materials can be voted on
So it's
to
the
go
next
out
3
in
weeks.
August. Yeah.
Yeah, I got that math really quick. Yeah.
So, do I have any people that are interested in joining a working group?
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Okay,
I will do the working group, but when you said Google Documents, I'm not sure I'm a Mac person, so I don't know how.
Oh, you-
successful.
do you have a Gmail at all?
Yes, I do, it's Mac.
Okay.
That's my email is Gmail.
Okay, well, yeah, and I'm happy to pull it up with you as well.
Okay,
Okay,
you just don't want to
I
do
think
it.
that would be excellent,
Okay.
especially to have Mary on it as well. Someone that has been through the program once, and to have the fresh perspective as well.
You're very welcome.
So, I will get them.
I'll try to see more time.
I'll be in touch tomorrow, basically.
And, as a reminder, some of the comments from the February or from the January meeting, like a lot of them were from Kevin.
Yeah,
Not to say we shouldn't consider them,
No, but you're right.
but Kevin's no longer on the commission, so I don't think you have to put a ton of weight into everything.
That's true. And yeah, some of the, all of those, I just put questions, kind of post them as questions, as comments, and I'm happy to add anyone else also on those materials if you'd like to take a look and add other comments.
Do all 3 of us a favor and send us a copy of the application again, so we have that information. I've got it somewhere in my documents.
Absolutely.
And the rubric, so we can all do it ourselves.
And so
We
that's,
talk about it.
yeah, Mary, that's gonna be what is gonna be in the Google Docs,
Okay.
because it's gonna be an editable document.
Oh, I see.
Oh, we
So then if I
change
can
it?
go in and change it.
Ooh.
That's
Track
what
change. I'm gonna put it on track
Suggestions.
Yeah.
Suggestion. Save a copy.
No, trust me.
I always print off the work copy anyway.
To be fair, I would be on this working group, I'm just about to be out of the country for 3 weeks, so I can't. be.
Well, I want to go out of the country. Where are you going? I'll go with
It's
you.
for work though.
Oh, no, you're.
All right, it's Costa Rica.
Ooh. Ooh.
Gonna be a lot of work.
So much work babysitting.
It's amazing.
Are you going with a bunch of kids?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. Bless your heart.
All right, is there
I don't think
anything else you need
we
to?
actually have to vote on it. I think we can just read it.
Okay. It says vote on the agenda.
Vote on the committee or vote on the plan?
I honestly don't understand if we have to vote on a working group, so we can vote just in case.
All in favor of this, of
Ragtag group being at the subcommittee.
all in favor of establishing this working group with Commissioner Lammy and Commissioner Scarlock, Roger, and Commissioner Metzger. Aye.
We're supposed to vote for ourselves.
Aye.
Thank you, Noah.
Yeah, thanks, Noah.
Okay, thank you, Tia. Does anybody have any to and froms? We've got the refrigerator this weekend
Yeah, I'm gonna go do that.
on Saturday. I'm sad I'm not gonna be here for that. Anything else?
I didn't know the front steps weren't there, so I did wander around a little bit. I went over to the back.
Future agenda item requests?
What? No, there's steps.
Any future agenda item requests?
I don't have any. Future agenda, I think. Okay. I move to adjourn. Not even 10 minutes past time with the discussion.
You are so
Impressed.
Thank you, everyone.
Anybody, yeah, do we need a second?
Oh, I second.
Okay.
Okay, never mind.
Thank you.
I don't need to do it, I'm not doing it.
Thank you
Thank
so
you guys
much.
for having
Sam.
this conversation.